Welcome to Studio with your local lay Dominicans. We'll be discussing some of the gems we discovered in our studium, where we share the fruits of our contemplation and the joy of the gospel message. Representing our St. Albert the Great lay Dominican chapter and co-host of today's show are myself, Cheryl Drozda.
Jeff Drozda.
And we have a special guest in the studio today. Nancy Nicholson is here from, welcome Nancy.
Hi.
And she's here. Nancy, I met at St. Patrick's Church here in Lafayette, and she's the interpreter for the deaf community at our parish. And Nancy and I have gotten to know each other a little more recently as I've taken some of the courses on ASL or sign language with her. So Nancy, I'm so glad to have you in and to share with everybody in the audience who really we want people to know that there's a community out there who we need to reach out to about faith, and if we can all be able to breach that communication barrier, it would be great.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great way to let people know more about the deaf community.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with this.
Well, that's a big, long story.
That's
Are you
good.
sure you're ready for it?
Yeah, we're ready for it.
Okay. Well, as you know, God always has a plan for us. We don't always know what it is, and we don't even sometimes see that it's begun. And so that's where I'd like to start, is that when it began,
yes.
I didn't even know that's what was happening until it's later, and you can see that's all part of what He's done.
Right.
So, it's when I was in junior high school, my aunt was playing basketball for USL, and she, that summer there was a camp, and she was one of the counselors. And my dad was supposed to register me for camp, and he was late in doing that. And when he did call, they said that they were full. And he knew that was not going to sit well. And so he begged. He said, you have to have something somewhere. There has to be a bed for her somewhere. And they said, no, we're full. We're actually full. He said, she can drag a sleeping bag on the floor. And he said, well, if that's the case, then we have a space in the dorm with the girls from the school from the deaf. He said, she'll take it. And so I did. That summer, I roomed for a week. That was the beginning. I roomed for a whole week with the girls from the school for the deaf. And that was an amazing experience. It's so intertwined, it's incredible, because the person that I became best friends with that week was Monique Mouton. And when I say that name, some people out there listening might say, wow, that name rings a bell. That's because that's Myra Mouton's daughter. Myra Mouton, I think for 50 years, ran the Deaf Action Center over there by Village du Lac. And so years ago, Monique and I became fast friends. We became pen pals. We spent time at each other's houses. We even had similar sign names, because her name was M.M. Monique Mouton, and mine's Nancy Nicholson, N.N. How cool for teenagers, right? And so, but then we grew up and we kind of went our own ways, right? And so time goes by, and the aunt who played basketball for USL, she has a son who's born deaf.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, she was there too.
The camp counselor who was there.
She was there too. So not only did I have the opportunity, but she also had the opportunity to see that deaf is normal. Deaf is just different, maybe.
Yes.
You can't hear, but then everybody's different.
Right.
And so if you can just see past that, because, deafness is an invisible disability. You can't walk up to someone and see that they're deaf.
Right.
And so if we can just, remember that we are all the same, and then just start to embrace that, I think that's what God showed us that week of camp, is that deaf can. And, that's where it all started.
Oh, that's great. And it's not even just being completely deaf, but even hard of hearing. Several people learn sign language as well, because it's difficult when you can't hear a lot of what's happening, and you need a way to communicate better. So it's not just deaf, it's hard of hearing. So that's a bigger group of people, right?
Yes, that's right. And the hard of hearing community is bigger, because sometimes you don't even know that someone's hard of hearing. because they don't use sign language,
Right.
you know.
Now, when you say sign language, what does that mean? I mean, is there an American Sign Language, a French Sign Language, Spanish Sign Language? I mean, how does that all work? Because I think there's some nuances, even in the United States among signers.
That is right. And you just started the list. It's a list of different sign language, just like we have languages all over the world. American Sign Language is what we use here in America. And it has its own grammar, syntax, form, structure. It has its own culture. There are dialects, just like any other culture and language. And I've been fascinated with it since the day I started learning it. And I can't stop. I can't stop teaching it. I can't stop sharing it. I can't stop serving it. And yes, there is a difference also between American Sign Language and sign language.
Or signing exact English.
What is that?
Maybe.
Yes, signing English. And so signing English would be a system. So we speak English, right? And sometimes learning another language, which ASL is, could be difficult. And so for people who speak, maybe they would prefer possibly to learn to sign in English word order. So you kind of borrow from American Sign Language, hopefully use the principles that go along with that, and then you can use a system of sign language where you're representing language on the hands,
And the whole thing for me, and I guess I should mention that as a young kid, I was fascinated with sign language. Somehow I got a book and I started teaching myself the alphabet. And then when I was in college, I did do an internship at a school in Columbus, Ohio, a school for the deaf. It was Alexander Graham Bell School for the Deaf at the time. So it's an elementary school. And so I learned a bit of sign language. And then over the years, so when I ever fast forward, to St. Patrick's, it was like tugging in my heart that I wanted to be able to communicate with these people. I know they're amazing people. And it's so frustrating because, you can learn the language of someone who speaks Spanish or French, but the deaf cannot learn our language. So it's up to us to try to break that barrier. So at least, would you recommend to people, for me, if you learn how to fingerspell, you can at least break some of the barrier. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah, just learning the alphabet, and that's very simple. I did that when I was a little kid. So it's something that I feel like promoting, and I try to get our children know how to fingerspell because, first of all, they love to do that when nobody else can tell what they're saying to each other. But second of all, I think it's just a passion of mine to be able to have at least the rudimentary way of communicating with the deaf if they need to.
Yes, yes. The alphabet is a start and it's a must, right? If you're going to learn sign language, you definitely have to learn the alphabet first. And if the alphabet is as far as you go, that's great. It's all about communicating.
Right.
Right.
And as I've gotten to, spend more time with the people, at least here and there at St. Patrick's, I've wanted to learn more. So I'm trying to dive deeper into the language so that I can get past what their favorite animal and color is and go into something deeper. But through Nancy, I'm able to communicate on a higher level, which is great because and how does that make you feel? First of all, I think it's amazing because you give a lot of your time and effort to bridge that gap so that they can have a community feel and discuss. So if it weren't for you being there, there's several times when we've been at breakfast or whatever that it would be very difficult. And I just looked up to you so much because you open a world of friendships with other people and you just allow yourself to do that, to be that communication. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you because you don't give without receiving.
Right.
And so just the fruits of my labor, if you want to use those terms,
right,
that's enough for me.
Right.
Years ago, I had the fantastic opportunity, and, he's always working, just like you said you did an internship years ago.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There was a man named Joe Benedetto. He was a teacher at Lafayette High, and he studied for 5 years to become a deacon. here in Lafayette, and he succeeded at that. He's Deacon Joe Benedetto. I don't think he's with us anymore. However, he taught me, I had the opportunity to not only interpret and be privy to the knowledge that was shared in the diaconate program, but he taught me so much about how to be a facilitator for him, a tool for him as an interpreter, not just when I was doing workshops for him, but when there were socials.
Okay.
He taught me how to, he called it shadow interpreting. I would shadow the hearing, I would shadow him, and then when he encountered someone that he wanted to talk to, immediately I became the shadow of the hearing person.
Okay.
And so, and he would sign, and he spoke because he had lost his hearing.
He did sign. Oh,
he was deaf. I'm
okay.
sorry. I forget to mention that.
Okay, I was wondering. All right. So he was deaf.
He was deaf,
Okay.
but he had lost his hearing when he was a teenager, so he still had his speech.
Okay.
So he could speak, but then he couldn't hear what
wow.
the response was. And so he taught me to, when we walked up to someone and he introduced himself, I just flipped around, and there I was to provide him with whatever the other person said.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And in that moment, that person would realize, he must be deaf because this person's signing what I'm saying, And so that's actually something I still enjoy doing for friends of mine, or even, if they go through the Deaf Action Center, they can hire me through there. But for funerals or weddings or events that are like reunions where there's socials, I'll do that for some of the deaf so that they can socialize with everybody and not just get a thumbs up all night.
Right. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I have a couple of questions. So as a Catholic, and you were born and raised a Catholic, and you are obviously part of the hearing and the deaf community. Is there much difference in how people worship? Do you notice much difference in?
No.
Okay. So other than I think it's beautiful. So I think seeing the deaf community worship in sign language is a beautiful thing. And at St. Patrick's, we've had Laura Huval in
Yes.
to do a praise and worship and an ASL sort of combined worship.
Yes,
session.
because 3 of our deaf parishioners participated in that.
Yes, it was beautiful.
Yes.
So I've gotten, and everybody joined along, because when you see this, it's kind of like we're Catholic, and to praise God, we use all of our body, right? We genuflect, we know to cross ourselves. So it almost seems natural to us as Catholics to want to jump in and do the signs for Alleluia and praise and follow along. And that kind of brings me to our next thing, which is having sitting on the parish council at St. Patrick's. I kind of wanted the idea of introducing to people that go to the 10 o'clock Mass. By the way, it's at 10 o'clock Mass that you interpret the Mass, in which, by the way, is a marvelous feat, because it is with Father Josh Guillory, and Father Josh's homilies are very
Full.
Yes, he aims high. So Nancy, in order to interpret, has to take that information and try to interpret it into another language, which is impressive, very impressive, I'm going to just say. So I really wanted to have people who go to 10 o'clock feel comfortable with doing the responses. So beginning this coming Sunday, you're going to be doing a little bit of time after the 10 o'clock Mass. And what is that date?
The 23rd?
The 23rd.
Is it the 23rd?
I think it is, yeah. So the 23rd, after 10 o'clock Mass, you're going to begin showing some of the parishioners some of the responses to the Mass so that they can join along. Like simple things like just the Amen, the Alleluia, maybe be with your...
with
your spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and just all the things. Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world, have mercy on us. It's such a beautiful one. I love that.
I'm excited about teaching that one.
I know.
Yes.
That's one of my favorites. And I know some of these signs, but I'm a little hesitant to participate. But you're saying, I think that the deaf community would enjoy other people sharing in their communication, right?
Yes, because as you know, the parishioners, the deaf parishioners that we have, they're responding in sign language.
Right.
And often even in singing with us
Right.
in sign language.
Yes.
And so if the people in church would do sign language with them, as little or as much as you can,
Right.
it would just be so, it sends such a message of love,
Right.
right?
Right. Support and love. Like we love seeing it. It is beautiful, and we want to participate in the way you communicate. I think that's the message that it would give.
Well,
And so-
you mentioned Laura Huval, the
Yes.
event that we had last
Oh,
year
yes.
around this time, and it was centered around the Divine Mercy song that she did in Divine Mercy Sunday, and she had just released an album, and so we focused on her whole event, and at the end, you remember what happened? We taught that last song to the audience.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And I got a video of that. It was so beautiful.
You sent it to me.
Yes,
That's
I
right.
did. And we sent it to
Okay,
Bob.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
It
Was amazing.
Yes, it was. And everybody participated. And because it is, like I said, a very Catholic thing to put your whole body into worship. And that's a good thing. So
You're listening to Christ Our King Catholic Radio for Acadiana. This is the Studium to Studio program put on by your late Dominicans, your Third Order Dominicans here in Lafayette, Louisiana. And we're here every Thursday at 4 p.m. thanks to Stein Lumber with locations throughout all of Acadiana. And today we're talking with Nancy and getting a little bit of perspective on how we can better interact and serve and be with the deaf community. Now, so what does that mean for when you say deaf community in Louisiana? Is that just one group of people all doing the same thing? Is that a bunch of people doing different things? I mean, are there meeting places? I mean, tell me more about the deaf community and deaf communities that are here in Lafayette.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. So the deaf community has a building called the LAAD building, and it's over there by Acadiana High. And that's the place where you can have events if you're involved in that. That's where the meetings are. That's where all the updates happen and social events that are specific to the deaf community in this area. Not say Acadiana, Mm-hmm. But there are other things that happen, outside of that. And yeah, it is one big community, but just like any group, you have subgroups, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so there's different things that we do. There's a lot that goes on at the LAAD building, lots of celebrations. But then every second Friday of the month, we have a group of deaf and deafblind who meet at Jet Coffee, right there past the mall. We meet at 6 o'clock. They have to kick us out at 10. That's right. And you know what that is for? That's so that they can be there, just not to really socialize with each other. Don't get me wrong. They enjoy getting out and seeing each other. But it's an event that's held for the hearing people to come and socialize with deaf and deafblind. Practice your sign language. Just visit. Get to know people. And so that's actually open to the public.
Okay.
We have lots of sign language classes that are offered in Acadiana. I do private classes, and those are held downtown at my place, Acadiana Talent Community Collective. But SLCC offers sign language classes. There's sign language classes at UL. And there's also sign language classes at the LAAD building. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Some are ASL. My classes are a combination of sign language on the hands as well as ASL. But, yeah. We have Louisiana Hands and Voices. That's a parent group. And periodically they meet with all the younger children and have events here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in terms of growing up deaf, are there deaf schools in Louisiana? Because I know some states have 3 or 4 schools. Some states might have 1 school. I think Baton Rouge might have 1. Are there just one, and how do the deaf communities interact with those schools?
And so that's a great question. The Louisiana School for the Deaf in Baton Rouge can either be attended by deaf or hard of hearing people, by being a resident there or by living within, a traveling distance. So that's the school for the deaf. You have to be deaf or hard of hearing to attend that school. It's an amazing school. Over the years, the attendance has decreased because we have more services, more things out there in Louisiana. But I'll focus on Acadiana. Mm-hmm. Here in Lafayette, Lafayette has a program for the deaf and hard of hearing, Lafayette Parish School System, and you can begin at age 3 because being deaf is a high risk for language delay if you don't start early. Mm-hmm. Not cognitive problems,
right?
Language delay. Okay, and so being high risk, as soon as birth, it's called the EDDI program, the Early Hearing and Detection Intervention Program with the state. They follow the babies after they're tested at birth to make sure that they have services and that they're being seen by an audiologist. Because what we know is that as long as we can give them the services that support the family so that they can succeed, whether they use sign language or not, whether they have hearing aids or not, cochlear implant or not, we know by supporting the family from 0 on up, that child will more likely succeed. Mm-hmm. And so Lafayette Parish has the 0 to 3 program, and that's the early steps that the state offers. And then at 3 years old, you can go to S.J. Montgomery. And then after that, we have the program is at Edgar Morton, and then Lafayette High School. It's been deemed, though, because S.J. Montgomery is going to be demolished, the program will be at Broadmoor Elementary, which is the feeder school for Edgar Morton. So it was a great move on their part. Lafayette Parish serves Lafayette, Acadia, Vermilion, St. Martin, some of St. Landry, and some of Evangeline. Yes. So those students are actually bused in, and believe this or not, some of these babies get on the bus at 5:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Wow.
That's right. And there's an attendant there, and hopefully they let them go back to sleep and right, and keep them safe on that long bus ride. But yes, that's what we have here.
So another question some of the listeners might have, and I kind of let you know I was going to spring this on you, is how does a deaf person go to confession?
Oh, yes. How does a deaf person go to confession? Well, they can just go in and hand them a note. They can write back and forth. They could do that. They could use their phone if they wanted to.
Okay.
They could use an interpreter. But the most personal way,
the best
the
way,
preferred way, and the reason why some deaf people may not attend confession is because they don't have a priest that signs. The only priest that signs now is retired for the P card. And he's in the area, but he's retired. And so I think, this is what I failed to mention. So we used to have, when it was at the DAC, they had Mass every Sunday. And it was usually in sign language. We had different priests who could sign or came and signed.
Okay.
And after that, they would have a potluck lunch. And everybody would visit. That was the social time. But then the building was demolished, and so we don't have the Sunday Mass, the facility anymore. It's located over there on St. Mary with the Catholic Charities office. Okay. And they still provide services, but it's not so much a social place. And years ago when I saw James, my friend James, who attends St. Patrick's,
right.
And I was attending for quite some time, and then I happened to notice him there. He had been attending for some time, and I said, hey, would you like me to interpret? And that's when it all started, actually, me interpreting at St. Patrick's.
So he had attended before an interpreter, or there were other interpreters?
Yes. His mother was a parishioner there, and she was elderly, and he would bring her to Mass.
Oh, okay.
And he would sit without an interpreter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that? And so when I saw that one Sunday, I just happened to see him, and I was like, James, what are you doing? You come here all the time? He says, yeah, my mom, I said, well, I'll be happy to interpret. What time do y'all usually come to Mass, 10? He said, yeah. I said, perfect for me. I don't like to get up too early. He said, me neither. So
how many years ago was that?
Oh, that must be 6 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's about 6 years now.
Oh, that's amazing. And one thing I want to tell people, you'd mentioned sign names that that your Nancy Nicholson was an NN. So just to let people know that this is just an interesting, deaf community cultural thing that they don't spell out their name every time they say it, especially among friends. They have a shortened sign, right?
Yes.
So that's what she was talking about whenever she said sign names. So I thought of that when you said James, because I know his sign name is like a drawing, because he does.
He's an artist. Yes, he
artist.
is. He's also a drafter.
Yes.
And he's the one who hand drew with ink my Acadiana Talent logo.
Oh, wow. And I definitely would recommend Acadiana Talent. I didn't, I only knew about Nancy's sign language skills. I didn't know that she was also an advocate for children's talent. So I would so recommend checking this out. Our daughter Colette goes to UL, and she is taking the ASL sign language course there. But we have also taken tutoring with Nancy, and I've also dropped in on some of her drop-in classes. She has so many variety of things. You can just drop in on a class during the week. I think it's Wednesday at 12 and 5:30. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Or 5 or 5:30.
That's right. And so you can either email me, like at nancy@acadianatalent.com.
Okay.
Because I'd like to know if you're going to be there, just
Right.
to register,
I try
right?
to do that.
But what it is over the years, as I've taught sign language, I noticed that sometimes people can't make it, and they feel maybe they've wasted their money, or they can't quite learn this new language, the structure and grammar of ASL, and so they fall away.
Right.
And so what I've started doing the past few years is it's $10 a class when you show up for class. If you don't show up, you don't owe me anything. But if you show up, it's $10. And then I do families for $25. And that way the whole family can come for $25 if they want. And that has worked a little bit better. The other thing that I do now is I teach both sign language which is the system on the hands, and ASL, so that people have a choice. I just want them to communicate.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. And is there a PSE? Do you recognize that? I've heard of that. Okay. That's sort of a mixture.
Pidgin Sign Language. It's just a combination of the languages, English and ASL.
Okay. Because that's kind of what I do.
Yes.
As you know.
Right. Because all these little words in
Right.
English that we think and feel are very important,
Yeah.
they're really not that important when you're expressing a concept. ASL expresses a concept, an idea, a picture.
And it's not just in the hands, by the way. The face is so important, is what I've learned. And if you all know me, you know I'm not always as expressive in my face. So it's becoming a thing where I'm trying to do better about showing, because it's literally part of the meaning is in your face, whether it's a word that could mean a couple of different things. And if you're not looking at like a question, then they're going to think, why are you saying that? Nancy just did that to me this week when I was trying to ask some kids about the animals that was their favorite, and I wasn't giving the question first. So it was very confusing, right? And
Yes.
it was the same words. It's just my face wasn't asking a question.
That's right.
So I'm learning.
Yes.
So-
And thank goodness we're on radio, because for those who don't know me, they may see I'm very expressive, whether I'm using sign language or not. I think I'm just passionate about too many things.
And that makes you very good at what you do, though. I mean, I think your interpretation is probably so valuable to the people, especially at St. Patrick's, because you're communicating with your full, features and your expression and everything. I love it. So,
Well, and what better thing to do than to let the Holy Spirit work and
That's
share
right.
the word.
And I always say, I told Nancy, you have the gift of tongues, but it comes through in your hands, right?
She told me that, and I started laughing. I thought, oh, okay, I'll take that. I'll take it.
Well, thanks again for joining us. And again, I'd recommend everybody check out Nancy's, what's your email again?
Nancy at Acadiana Talent, or sign language specialties at gmail.com.
And remember to stand firm in the absolute truth, Jesus Christ, because only the truth bears grace.
Lived through time, passed through fire, broke my heart, wounded desire, changed my life, fixed the past, stared at death, and it stared back.